Okay, so that was the old rules regarding, and you can read them, and they're an eye-opener. These rules, how the average citizen can ask or hold this council accountable for anything based on these rules is frankly amazing. How they can do it, I don't know. Anyway, like I said, on the 21st of January, I found out, hey, they're going to accept my amended question, which reads, is it the usual practice of this council's elected and unelected officials to victimise and criminally neglect its mental health superintendents or to deny them their rights under Human Rights Act legislation that this country signed up for? Well, that was allowed. I was amazed. So I spent all Wednesday night to the early hours of the morning writing out my supplementary question. You're allowed one of those under the procedural rules. And when you turn up for the council, because you have to be there, that's another thing, you have to be there in order for your public question to be asked. Now, I don't know how flexible employers were. When I was in the working world, I had difficulty being allowed to go to the dentist, let alone go to, excuse me, I need to go to a council meeting to ask a public question. Well, that's pretty spooky, isn't it? Shouldn't you be able to nominate your local councillor as the person asking your public question so that you don't have to be there in person if you're in the working world? Because I'm sure the council aren't going to pay your expenses or your half a day off work salary deductions, are they? So that a person has to turn up. But I wanted to ask my supplementary question anyway. So when you get there, they type it all up. That's my question, and there's a reply, and there's a note that I made on the bottom of it. I'll read out the reply. It is not the practice of this council's elected members or officers to victimise or neglect its tenants in the manner described, nor to deny them rights under the Human Rights Act. The council is committed to equality in service delivery, to treating people fairly, and to ensuring that the services we offer are accessible to all. Likewise, we also seek to address inequalities when developing policies and providing local services. I am unaware of any alleged breaches of the Human Rights legislation, but will ask the council's monitoring officer to investigate any outstanding complaints that are brought to my attention that have not already received a response. You will also be aware that the council also has a corporate complaints policy, and if any tenant wishes to lodge a formal complaint, it will be investigated accordingly and a response will be provided to the tenant. Under that I did write, and I did mention at the end of my supplementary question, then why is it the request for a corporate complaint number is still outstanding from January 2006? Actually, the way I said it was, I have a corporate complaint number outstanding from 2006, January 2006. Now then, Judith read that out. My turn to speak now. You got to pop the little thing, which one of the security guys did for me, and the microphone comes on, and this is my supplementary question. I put it to this council that A, the refusing to allow a citizen to record via video of both full council and any other committee meetings, and B, the limitations placed on public questions as set out in its procedural rules are both violations of the Human Rights Act. For instance, the rule forbidding a public question as it relates to an individual thwarts true accountability of both elected and unelected members of the council. Questions that might well point out systemic failures in this council's duty of care for its vulnerable citizens, thus leaving an individual in a situation where victimization and criminal negligence can continue unabated, to the detriment of their physical and mental emotional health. As has been the case with a tenant of 15 Garth Place, a tenancy that violates human rights legislation in terms of the right to privacy, the right to a peaceful enjoyment of one's home, and the right to freedom from the threat of harassment. Finally, I ask this council to call for a public inquiry as to why the Welsh Assembly Government has knowingly allowed this council to flaunt these rights for so long, aided and abetted, as both have been, by South Wales Police, the IPCC and the Police Authority and the BBC, to name but a few, so that no vulnerable adult has to suffer for 9 years at the hands of an uncaring council ever again, as documented in the blogs and videos available at http://bbccrazydave.blogspot.com, which at their core have the greatest good to the greatest number as their primary motivation. I did that right on there. Do I have a seconder? But in the fluster of the moment, I believe I forgot to ask that. So that's my supplementary question. I think you have to go to first causes first and question the legality of the rules, or the procedural rules, and things like accountability and what they call them, citizen journalists. And in the blog I did say that, well, I never intended to speak with Anne Rowland James on that January the 1st morning. I was merely recording that I was actually delivering it to her home, because apparently she's not received any emails from me through the council system. I find that surprising. I also find it surprising that I did actually sit down with her one day in the library, explain the situation, give her details of the blogs, and again, never heard anything from that. But I don't have video evidence of myself doing that, the same as I don't have any video evidence of myself talking to Mike Murphy after me asking that supplementary question, where we discussed various things about this tenancy, sound insulation, and the sound department coming to do their tests and then not willing to do a second floor to ceiling transmission value test. They only wanted to do the airborne sound one, because I think that if they had done the floor to ceiling test, they would have found that the 2 layers of plasterboard that they recommended be put up there to deal with that actually exacerbated the situation. But there we go, gotta make this short, just to get it up there and on the World Wide Web, and maybe some people might see it, and I'm going to send it to the usual suspects anyway, and we'll see what the BBC got to say about that. Like, it's a great time for burying bad news, isn't it, Mr. Thompson? So yeah, it's Monday the 21st of January, nothing been done about the hallway lighting, reclassifying cannabis back to B, even though the BMA ought to be saying to central government, really, excuse me, Mr. Brown, there's 7 million of them out there doing it, we really ought to be taking, advising them, look, you're using it, drink it, eat it, don't friggin' smoke it. And lots of other issues. Oh, got a minute maybe where we can chat a bit more. So yeah, limitations, set out procedure rules, violate the true accountability. I wonder if I have to, resubmit another one now about the housing revenue account, like I chat with Mike. There wouldn't be 30 million now in the general fund in rent rebates if all council tenancies were a housing association. There would only be 1.5 million from that lot.